What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the HIT.OR.DIE podcast. I am your host, Jake HIT.OR.DIE. Going solo for the first time, I think ever. I don't think I've done this by myself yet. I am sorry to those who watch on YouTube. This was kind of a last-minute thing here, so I don't have the video equipment with me, but you get the good old-fashioned way, the good old-fashioned audio for you guys this episode. Again, I don't know how long this will be. It's been a interesting week here in the Central Valley for baseball. It's kind of why I decided to do this today. A lot of things have been going on the last few weeks in our area, and some things people know, some things people have heard of, things people have seen themselves. And Monday was kind of the crack in the ice for me, like the final crack that just kind of, just tired of sitting by and just seeing things tolerated, and nobody wants to, and maybe nobody can bring it up. That's why. Like, some of these coaches can't just go out and say what they really want to say, what they really think and feel, what they really see, because there's no winning for them. And there's probably no winning for me in this. I don't have any skin in the game, right? I'm not coaching anywhere. I'm not, I don't have kids in any programs. I'm kind of welcoming people to respond. And again, the big news this week was the Monday, which we did do a Twitter Spaces, and I appreciate those who jumped on and talked or just listened and sent messages sharing their thoughts, or text me, or phone calls that I've had with people throughout the week. I've had a lot of them, by the way. I feel like I've been on the phone all day, every day until today. But a lot of things have come out since Monday, and maybe Monday we were premature in our thoughts, and we didn't have the full context. We didn't know all the details. In fact, we still don't know all the details, and I'm sure we'll never know most or some of the details. But again, the big news was Buchanan baseball had let go or fired head coach Troy Gloss with 2 weeks remaining in the season. They were 9-14 at the time, and initially it was just like, well, why? That was my first question, and some of this I didn't get to share on Monday. With Pags and some of the people there. And so I just felt like, now that I've heard some other things coming out and talked to some people within the Buchanan community, whether it be parents, some other people I will not mention, and honestly, even people that are employed at Buchanan that work on campus. I'm not going to say who specifically, but there's some interesting things that I've heard, and everybody's going to ask, well, who, you're just saying stuff you hear. Like, listen, Yeah, I don't want to get any more people fired. How about that? I talked, people that work there. Eyes, like that. Again, I don't want to say it because I don't want anybody to lose their jobs. When I see people under burner accounts commenting things that I just, they're not right, and then I disagree with, and things that are rather funny or just to save face. It's like, no, of all the schools, Buchanan has been known for liking to talk, and to want to talk, but then not want to be talked about, I think is ridiculous. You don't get that privilege. So, but again, he was fired, and I couldn't come to a logical conclusion as to why, right? So then you hear, well, some boys got suspended. There's, been some things within the team that people didn't like, weren't in love with his style, a little more relaxed, maybe big league manner. And what's funny is, like, I've heard comments, well, he didn't know what he was doing. He, no experience or lack of experience and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, well, that you hired him knowing that. Everybody knew he wasn't a head coach. He'd never been a head coach. What we knew was he was a World Series MVP, an all-star, big leaguer, World Series champion with a lot of accolades as a player. And it was this big splash, right? It's not like, and I got to shout out my boy Jeff Cox, Watch Your Lips podcast. Check that out if you don't listen to it. But Jeff was, we had a funny conversation, and I'm not going to do it justice. He'll have to do it on his own. But was like, it's not like Troy Gloss was down in San Diego making a sandwich, and his phone goes off, and it's, alert, Buchanan baseball has a head coaching position open. And he was, it's like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this day for Buchanan. Like, that's probably what people think over there, that maybe, but he didn't seek out Buchanan. He was sought after. Like, people wanted him here. Knowing what they know, again, everybody knew. People on that panel that are in that dugout now knew. They knew, you knew. So we can't be surprised. And that can't be the reason you fired him, because you knew. You hired him. So I don't get that. I don't get some of those responses. Is it because players had left? Players talking about leaving? I have a response to that I'll get to. But is that what it is? The young men that got suspended, I just assumed it was a game, and then I'd heard people, well, why was it 2 games? I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was 2 games. And then I find out it was supposed to be for 3 games. But Gloss was let go Monday before the 3rd game which would have been Tuesday. So I'm working on clarifying that, but was told that it was supposed to be a 3-game suspension. I get that the school had their own investigation to it and stuff like that, but ultimately, Troy Gloss suspended these players for whatever reasons. And if the school was so opposed to it, they probably would have overturned his decision, I would think, because they sat out 2 games. So I don't think the school was opposed to it. And then you see, the parents' narrative is false narrative, whatever, coming from a coach that's at another school. Granted, he was a Buchanan guy, but still, like, who cares? Why do you care? Why do you care at all? You don't even coach there. I find that hard to believe. And then it turns out there were parents there. Again, talk to people employed there that know there were people there. So if it's players we're worried about losing, I don't think Troy Gloss was that worried about it. He lost 1, and I think another one was out or on his way out, and maybe if there was more, fine. If you don't want to play here, go. I'm going to go to war with who's going to buy in, who's going to work hard. And if you're not going to buy in, then go. And if you feel like you need to go, then go. That was the problem. Again, that's not a reason you fire a guy. No, I'm not. I mean, he's the head coach. It's his program. You hired him to run the program the way he sees fit. There was things that I probably as a coach would be like, I get why parents would be frustrated if that's what was going on or if these couple things were happening or did happen. But to fire the guy 2 weeks left of the season, is that those things weren't enough. They just weren't enough. And is it coincidence that if it was a 3-game suspension, before the 3rd game, they let him go? And then sure enough, they played the next day. They played that game. They didn't sit out the 3rd day. If you're out there and know more about that than I do, let me know. But again, these are people that I trust that are telling me these things. Some people don't want to talk, and that's fine. And some people had opportunities to talk on Monday at the spaces and chose not to. People reached out. I've spoken to people. Again, I've spoken to people tight over there. Really, none of the people I talked to had anything really bad to say about Troy Gloss. I will say that as well, which, again, I find interesting. I've seen all the daddy ball comments, and there was some, things shared about some of the coaches or a coach on that staff. But I just thought it was, I just didn't like how this all went down. It stinks. The other thing with this whole firing or letting go or whatever, relieved of his duties, is just think about it. Like, you expect people to believe that Friday night, Troy Gloss was the head coach, and by Monday morning, as a matter of fact, he was let go. Right, he's fired. But by practice time, they were full bore staffed. They were staffed to the gills. There wasn't anybody on that staff of Troy Gloss's that could have been made the interim head coach. I'm asking. No, the guys that hadn't been there before, whether it had been Wilson, Tapuzian, Azador. Nobody could have stepped in and finished the season the last 2 weeks as an interim. Instead, you bring back people that weren't involved at all throughout the year. And you expect people to believe that there was nothing happening behind the scenes in a matter of a weekend and a Monday morning, and by that afternoon for practice, we're fully staffed. You really expect people to believe that there is no plotting? You really think people are going to believe that? I've heard some of the responses. Listened to the Central Valley Sports Report yesterday. I heard, Paul Metter's response, and I like Paul a lot, and Paul's good for this area, and he's good for our valley, and what they do broadcasting games is great, and they really highlight a lot of the players, and Paul's just a nice, genuinely like just a nice guy, like seriously. And if anybody you can't get along with Paul Metters, you got something wrong with you. But I mean, that doesn't take away the fact that we didn't really hear anything. Even in his show, he talked about being a part of the media. You got a Buchanan guy, lifer, homer, other than this year, sitting next to you, admittedly, on your show. Are we really going to get your real, true thoughts about the situation? You don't have any other questions? Like, we didn't really hear your real thoughts on this. I don't know. That was just my opinion, my perspective of it. And then to hear, his guest was Trenton Kemp, who's the third base coach at Bullard High School, essentially say, like, bottom line, kids were leaving, and you can't have that as a program. I mean, as long as they're leaving to come to Buchanan or you guys, you're okay with it. You've always been okay with that. You're okay taking that. That's, you know what I mean? Like, you weren't sending kids back to where they came from, right? We just pluck and poach from each. Well, this guy's good here. I mean, it's been going on for years. You just see how people end up where they end up. Like, how do kids that live 30 minutes away end up here? 20 minutes away. How do they end up here? How do they end up in Fresno or Clovis Unified Schools? It's not just limited to those guys. Right? We all know. Everybody knows. Everybody's got some, for the most part. Right? Most of the schools got them. You got to remember, people listen in Bakersfield to this podcast. People listen in Visalia to this podcast. People listen in Sacramento to this podcast. So it's not like my messages are isolated to just the people here. I think the real problem is maybe we haven't reported on some of the things enough. We haven't talked about it enough. We've been kind of like everybody else. We've just stayed silent about it. And I know there's people out there that just hate this, that hate this podcast, that hate some of the stuff we've said or in the past or what we say now or our take. And I got to say, I love it. I love that you hate it. I really do. I love that you hate Roth or me or people we associate with. I love it. Because you can attack me personally all you want. The personal attacks don't change none of this. They don't change none of the shit that's gone down. Honestly, please continue to hate it and continue to come back and get more and fill your cup up. It's like somebody sweeping stuff under the rug, right? And they just continue to sweep up stuff under the same rug. And then in the middle of this rug, underneath it, you've got this just mound of shit. As if nobody sees it. Nobody notices this mound of stuff. And listen, I'm not, I'm nobody. We just have a podcast. I have some personal thoughts and opinions. So you don't have to agree with them. That's okay. That's totally your right. And sometimes it's more fun when people don't agree. And then so when I hear on the radio, the kids can't leave. Yeah, I hated it too when they left. It sucks. It's hard. It's no fun when you lose your guys. What's even worse is when you have to play them and you see them across in that other dugout. That's tough. It's tough. Welcome to the world of most schools. I feel bad for the kids because it's almost like they were pawns in this. They're the ones that matter. The only ones that matter. Period. You're worried about wins. You're worried about reputation. So you read the comments from a lot of these burner accounts, and that's kind of why I decided to do this. Is I just had a problem with some of the things I read from people that are obviously close to the situation, that are afraid to put their real name on it. And I'm not. I'm Jake Hit or Die podcast. Most of you guys know where to find me or whatever. So, I mean, I don't really care. I don't really want to dive too much more into the firing itself because I don't agree with it. I thought there was no reason not to give him the rest of the season. From all the information that I could gather, I just didn't see a reason to let the guy go. Other than some people didn't like how it was going. Well, too bad. New coach, figuring it out. I mean, I think at some point he probably would have thought of it. He would have figured it out. I'm sorry. He would have figured out how to get things going again. So when you go on social media and you see comments, and that's kind of what I really want to address is the comments. Because it's people within the community that that were commenting stuff. And like I had an issue with some of the comments because they're coming from people that, again, they're Buchanan homers, which is fine. I'm not a Buchanan hater. I hate them all. I'm a Coyote, like Madera. That's it. I got a soft spot for Clovis West. I'll say that. When I see people were sending me screenshots of comments on Facebook from a Facebook group, Trenton Kemp. And I'll only name it because he said it publicly. He said it on Facebook. So it is what it is. People know who wrote this. The parent narrative is not why Troy Gloss was fired at Buchanan High School. It's a great narrative to push when your best friend gets fired, though, because people will take it and run with it. There were parents. It's not a narrative. There were parents. That's not it. And so then you ask, well, if the parent narrative's not right, why he was fired, then why was he fired? Because you're not at Buchanan anymore. You're at Bullard. So how do you know why he was fired? And if you clearly know that it wasn't the parents. So why was he? Share it. Tell us why. And that's kind of what the rest of the chat said. It was followed up with, you make an absolute statement and then a condescending one just to take off. His response to some of the comments were, it's not my place to say why he was fired, as there were multiple reasons. I wanted to jump on here and point out the countless laughable lies from the Eric Burns vent session, which you would go on to not point out. I didn't see any lies pointed out. So if you were going to point them out, why didn't you point them out? Unless you did and nobody sent me those screenshots. And if it's not your place to say why he was fired, because again, you're not a Buchanan anymore, but yet there's say it. You're making it your place when you say things like that. And if you think people aren't going to respond with some criticism towards you, I mean, how could you not expect that? You make statements like that and expect nobody to have follow-up questions? I do. Well, then why was he fired if you know? And then there was another comment on Instagram, which I thought was very interesting, from a Buckeyes fan, which I don't know if I have to guess after reading it where it came from. Lies. This has been the softest, misinformed crybaby shit I've ever heard. Again, these aren't my words. This is Buckeyes fan 96. Now, Buckeye, you can't say softest when you're commenting from a burner account. Let's just get that out of the way. It follows up with, you might fool people who aren't from the area, but anyone from Fresno should have sniffed this out once he said Buchanan needed facility upgrades, uniforms, baseballs. Laughing my ass off. What? This also could be false, but I've had a few people tell me that Coach Gloss did invest some money into the infield. I'm not sure whether it was dirt or something like that, but there were finances put towards that. Again, if I'm wrong, okay, I'm wrong. But I've had, again, a couple people tell me that did happen. Didn't say facility upgrades. Obviously, the facility is beautiful and one of the best in the area, as all track or Clovis Unified facilities are. So there's no disputing that. You're right. Baseballs, I heard that was a thing, that the baseballs were absolute shit. So again, I also heard that he bought helmets for the boys, or those helmets with the red and white, I think were purchased through Troy. I'm not sure if that was a Buchanan baseball thing or him. Troy Glass came in and made bad decision after bad decision, kicking out the most important coach who's been on staff for 20 years. And it's referencing Joe Kemp. The most important coach who's been on staff for 20 years? Or the most important assistant coach, maybe? A coach who would take his shirt off his back for any player who's ever stepped through the program and is a tremendous person. That I don't know Coach Kemp at all. I'm sure he would, because I know a lot of players absolutely love him. So, but I will say, in this circumstance, from some people that I spoke with and people in the program, some wanted him back, some didn't. I'm just going to be honest. That was what I was told. Telling the top 3 hitter on the team is only a PO was not smart. Again, there's other comments to that, but I'm not going to talk about a kid's decision to leave. There's kids leaving everywhere at multiple schools. There were things within that, though. It wasn't just go, you're a PO, okay? That kid is now transferred and is now killing it this year for a rival school. Maybe it's not all Gloss's fault, but whoever he was listening to gave him catastrophically terrible advice. That's another thing that I heard to be true. Again, I can't disagree with that. Gloss did the exact opposite of indulging himself in the culture. Says who? It's his team. He didn't come in to be the Buchanan of old. It's his team. He can create his own culture. It's not for you to say whether it's right or wrong. You don't have to like it, but you don't get to dictate the culture that he creates. Right? Buchanan of old was gone when you hired him. Just my personal opinion on that. That's all. And for the people who honestly think parents have any say in what the school athletic director's decisions are, seek God. End of the day, Gloss had a very talented roster, like Buchanan is every single year, and he put out a below-average product. Lackluster baseball, uninspiring baseball, no harder hustle from the kids. Rarely even heard in the dugout. Ask anyone who watched them this year. It was gross. Troy is obviously a very decorated player with an out-of-this-world career. You'd have to be brain dead not to acknowledge that. But sometimes a great player doesn't mean he'll automatically be a great coach or leader of men, which I've seen in the past as well. I've never disputed that. I didn't dispute that with you on Monday night. But sometimes a great player doesn't mean he's automatically a great coach or leader. I feel terrible for the kids who have gone through all this unnecessary drama. Yeah, I do too. But you guys, Buchanan's the one that put it on him. They didn't have to fire him. He didn't have to be fired. So unnecessarily, yeah, Buchanan unnecessarily did it. They did it. They put him through it unnecessarily. 2 weeks. I feel terrible for the kids who have to go through all the unnecessary drama while just trying to enjoy their high school baseball season. And for the parents who have to sit there and watch all these clowns, which includes yourself with your burner, on social media bag on them and their children. Well, I haven't bagged on any kids, and I'm not going to bag on any kids. Life goes on. People grow up. That was the comment. But then you followed up to another comment from the launching pad who was asking about what happened to the previous coach and the previous coaches or whatnot. And your response, Buckeye, the former coach did in fact have health problems, which I believe Coach Fonts did. That came out and said he did. And but Coach Donald got in trouble for reasons I won't say on social media. So you got no problem airing out Troy Glass when it's, Jesus, compared to, you won't air out Tom Donald? I wonder why that is. kind of interesting. That's the stance that you want to take. Gloss was 100% the reason Coach Kemp was told to leave the program. Fact. Buchanan never has been a shit show program. That's insane to say. To say Buchanan's never been a shit show is laughable. And to say that he's responsible, 100% responsible for Joe Kemp or for Coach Kemp, who was told to leave the program, prove it. Because I was told otherwise. And let me say, and listen, again, I don't know Coach Kemp, okay? I've heard tons of players love Coach Kemp, so I'm not going to attack that. But if Coach Kemp was the most important, as you said earlier, why when Coach Font stepped down and Coach Marsubian stepped down and retired, they were done, why didn't they just say, hey, Coach Kemp needs to be the head coach here? Did he even get an interview? Because, I mean, I was told he didn't, but I don't know for sure. I'm asking. Like, so if he's the most important coach on staff the last 20 years, it should be a no-brainer, I would think. But for some reason, it wasn't. And when you're told that whatever, for some reason, admin was not going to have him back as a coach, why is that? I want to know. You want to blame Troy Gloss? These are just questions I have. Prove it was Troy Gloss. Don't just say it. Don't say it was. Let's hear it. Let's hear why. Just like, why was he fired? Just make statements and that's it. We're going to leave him. And so at the end of the day, the new coaching staff is what it is. Why is it not even a day later, or not even a full, I don't even think a full 24 hours, players that left are being contacted? Fact. Why? Who? So not even a full day after Gloss is gone, we're going back to the people that left. If you guys are what everybody says, who cares? You're 2-0 with the same product that Coach Gloss had. So keep doing that. Keep coaching them up. Why are you trying to go get what left, what's gone? Why do you care about that? They left. Go build up what you have. And honestly, good for those kids. And I'm not lying. Good for those kids to respond and rebound. They're good coaches. No denying it. Good coaches. And I've always thought that. Always. I've always thought Coach Fonts is a good coach. I've always thought Coach Marsubian is a good coach. I know Jason Donald was insane player. And I've heard he's an excellent coach. And those guys go at it a certain way. And it's just way different than what they were used to. People didn't like it. But don't spit all this shit out trying to save Buchanan's face. Buchanan's stigma and the thoughts that people have, they've had him for a reason. They've always had him for a reason. And sure, you can say, well, they're just haters. That's fine. But again, for a school that loves to talk and loves to boast and loves to, stick out their chest, you don't want to be talked about? And I said earlier, it was the final crack in the ice for me. Because it's not just Buchanan. Like, don't think Buchanan is the only thing that's not as negative that's going on in the area. The CMAC is an absolute circus. Ask anybody involved. And one of my best friends is Chad Ralford, co-host of this show. And even his team's had moments where we've talked about it. Chad knows. And the last 2 times I've seen Garza play, I've seen a better dugout. It was a while ago when I saw him and I didn't like what I saw. And the last 2 times it was much better. And there's other teams in the CMAC. It's a shit show. It's all this talk and this tolerated stuff. It's tolerated. And it's really disappointing to see or to hear with my own ears, see it with my own eyes, a player say something to a head coach. It's possibly one of the most disrespectful things I've ever heard a player say. And in front of his head coach. And I guarantee you it wasn't addressed. Yeah, you apologize for a bat flip, but I know for a fact you haven't said shit about what your player said. Nothing. I know you haven't. Which just tells me all I need to know. And there's another school where Garza had to forfeit because of the drama that we can't. Umpires leaving games in the middle of the game, third, fourth inning, leaving games. This is all CMAC. So it's been really hard to come on here and highlight and praise and just be so enthusiastic about some of the things I've seen and witnessed. Not just stuff I've heard. I've actually seen it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. It's really disappointing. And it's just tolerated. Everybody's okay with it. And we just keep walking on eggshells. We don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to hurt feelings. They're kids. Well, they don't act like kids. They want to act like adults. They want to talk like adults. And, back to all these comments and the burners, especially at the Buchanan stuff, you in a million years, none of you would have said one of those things to Troy Gloss's face. None of you. In fact, all of you waited until he was gone. Who's soft? Did any parents try to get a sit down with Coach Gloss? I'm asking again. I'm genuinely asking. Did any parents before he was fired try to get a sit down, try to get some explanations, or see if anything was, hear your concerns as a parent community of the kids that you have on that team? Did that ever happen? And if they did, what was his response? Because that would be another interesting thing to hear. Or did we just go around him and try to do our best to cut him loose? The helmet situation thing was interesting because I also had somebody say that the helmets that Buchanan's been wearing, the red and the white, I think they were told to get rid of them or no, they're not going to be using them anymore or trash them or what. I don't know I don't know if that's true. This is one of those things that I heard secondhand. So I'm just going to say that if it is true, could be one of the most petty things I've ever heard in my life. Considering there's programs that can't afford to buy 10 helmets, let alone 25, 30 to just be discarded. Like, if that is true, I hope they went down to the JV team or freshman or junior high or donated somewhere. Or maybe it's not true at all. Maybe they're still using them. If there is any truth to that, again, petty. And it just speaks volumes of the way of life. Again, it's a win at all costs. Winning's not the most important thing in the world in the grand scheme. It's fun. It's fun to win. Obviously, losing sucks because it gets you fired 2 weeks before the season ends. But it's not the end of the world. And in 30 years, nobody gives a fuck about your senior year at Buchanan. Nobody cares. You're very lucky, because that school and the Clovis Unifieds are very lucky to have the resources that they do have. They're fortunate enough to have people who want to invest their money, their hard-earned money into those programs. And I'm not saying, and that's the other thing. I'm not saying that there's really good people everywhere, every program. Buchanan's got some phenomenal parents. And Buchanan's probably got some parents that want what's best for their kid and only their kid. I brought up on Monday on that Twitter Spaces the JUCO stuff. And I'm not trying to shit on JUCO. I'm not trying to shit on Fresno City or Reedley College or COS or Taft and Porterville. I'm not trying to. There's kids on those teams that I like. There's kids on that team, those teams that I've coached. I respect the hell out of Steve Purse. I like Mitch Carricker a lot. I always have. Coach Allen is a legend around here. But I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers. Then my point is that, like, what do I say to some of these scores and some of these stats when I'm seeing the best team in the conference is 5.15 ERA as a team? Some teams pushing 8. Again, I got to come on here and I've got to glorify and highlight things that are, say they're good, pretend. You want me to lie? I think we're chasing things we don't need to be chasing. I think leave your cell phone in your car. The cell phones in the dugout? No. You go to practice, leave your cell phone in the car. You got a game, leave your cell phone in the car. Your parents, you would think, should know where you are. Nobody needs to get a hold of you. Keep your cell phone in your vehicle when you go to practice. Leave your cell phone in your car when you go to the game. Game day, you don't need it. Listen, I'm not didn't have a big career. I didn't have a career at all. Average player at best. And I never try to present myself as anything more than I was. And I have no shame admitting that. I've been fortunate to be around a lot of really good coaches over the last 20 plus years and learn from a lot of really smart people that played at extremely high levels. And I've been fortunate, and I soak all that in, and I still learn, I still watch, I still try to get better. And I'm not even coaching. I'm coaching rookies little league. I think is an area we could do a whole lot better. And nobody wants to talk about it. We want to report the scores. We want to highlight the wins. But we don't want to talk about what's going on behind the scenes. We don't want to talk about where our game's going. Around here, we don't want to talk about some of the negative shit. And I'm sorry, as for all the positives, there's just as many negatives. And so if everybody else is going to glorify the positives and not talk about some of the negative stuff, I guess I'll have to do it. The playoffs are coming up. There's going to be a whole nother scenario with how the CIF and these rankings go and how this stuff happens and unfolds. And I'm sure there'll be another Twitter Spaces show, and we'll probably repeat ourselves like we do every year with these guys got screwed, those guys got screwed. Some teams can't even get excited to go to the playoffs because you could be 500 in D2 and this year end up in D1. So, we're going to have things to say, I'm sure, and people are going to be irritated about it. And, the season will continue and go on, but there's just things going and things happening I didn't like. I did not like this Buchanan thing. To me, it stinks. And if people hate me, they hate me. I don't really care anymore. I don't. Say what you want. Tell me to eat a salad. Whatever. I mean, if I need to go in further on some of that shit, I will. Completely disagree with me in my opinion and my thoughts. You can tell me I have all this information wrong. That's fine. Call me. Let's talk about it. Prove it. Don't just say I'm wrong. Okay? Because that's not going to work. It's just a lot of frustration. And, I was getting asked, like, where was we done? I'm glad it's back. Are you going to keep going consistently? That's the goal. That's the plan. I would love to get back to it. This was initially, like, this whole thing started with, that's what I wanted to do. Just kind of highlight the baseball around here. And that was 5 years ago. It's been almost 5 years since this started. And I want to continue to do that because there is a lot of good players in this area. And even at one of the schools I mentioned that I don't like some of the shit I've seen. I don't want to name it. I do. I really do. But he's one of the best players in our section. And I believe that. I think that. I've seen him play. Kid's a player. There's a couple of them. So there's a lot of good players here. A lot of good players playing right now. So it's not that there's not. It's just really, really hard when I continue to see just some of the most disrespectful stuff, whether it's in the field during a game or after the game, or even in the stands or down the lines. It's just some of the shit I hear. I don't have all the answers. I'm not right. I've made my fair share of mistakes. I'm no different than some of these kids were when I was 17 and 18. I talk trash. I never said anything to a coach. Never. None of our players did. That shit we'd have been dead. It would have been awful for our team. I know that for a fact. And so some of this stuff has got to get figured out. Some coaches need to step up and honestly not even worry about what the parents have to say, especially if it's the right thing to do. Because I guarantee you, if somebody disrespected Tom Donald the way Chad Rothford was, it would have been talked about. And it would have been a problem. And Chad would have been berated. Because I know a lot of people don't want him to succeed there, which is sad. Because at the end of the day, he's coaching kids as well. And so you wanting an adult to fail young men, again, you're no better then. You're no better. You know, and again, from that Bullard side, I saw a post regarding the Troy Gloss firing, and it was somebody that's really involved there. And it's, you know, Troy Gloss was never the right hire, should have never been hired. Like, to me, from a Bullard person, that's laughable. You know, like, you hired Aaron Weimer, who had no head coach. Like, it's the same thing. And you ran him out of town even worse. I know you threw him a bone and put him in the Hall of Fame, but honestly, that situation was probably worse than this one. Because you knew he was in over his skis. But baseball, it's it is a crazy area we live in. And I'm probably left stuff out, and I'm sure we'll keep addressing this because people are going to have more to say. People just want to let this go. Like, people just want to let the shit go, let it fly by the wayside. And I just don't want to do that anymore. If you have information that you want to prove to me otherwise, please do. Let's do it. This platform is open. I mean, I'm not opposed to anybody coming on here and talking. I really am not. Hit me up. Let's talk. Let's do it. Hopefully, I see you guys back here. Hopefully you come back and return and listen and continue to enjoy the podcast. Try to bring a better energy going forward or next time. Hit or die.